The steel door groaned, a wounded beast protesting its confinement. Each slow rotation of the massive hinges sent vibrations echoing through the concrete shell, a low thrum that settled in my chest like a persistent anxiety. Dust motes, disturbed by the intrusion of light, danced in the single beam of my headlamp, creating ephemeral galaxies in the artificial twilight. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and something vaguely metallic, clung to my lungs, a suffocating blanket woven from years of forgotten secrets. Outside, the world was bathed in the golden light of a late afternoon sun, a world I was willingly, perhaps foolishly, leaving behind. I stepped across the threshold, the weight of the door's silence a physical presence pressing against my back. It was a point of no return, at least for the next 24 hours. The ladder descended into the darkness, a rusted iron spine leading me deeper into the earth's embrace. Each rung was slick with condensation, cold against my gloved hands. The silence here was profound, a silence that swallowed sound and amplified the frantic beat of my own heart. Above, the rectangular patch of sky visible through the open doorway grew smaller, a fading memory of the world I knew. The descent felt endless, a slow-motion plunge into the abyss. My headlamp cut a feeble swathe through the gloom, revealing only the next rung, the next inch of progress. The walls were a tapestry of moisture and mineral deposits, weeping with the earth's silent tears. I imagined the weight of the soil above, the crushing pressure of tons of rock and dirt, and a primal fear stirred within me, a whisper of claustrophobia that threatened to overwhelm. But I pressed on, driven by a curiosity that bordered on obsession, a need to understand the secrets buried beneath the surface. This wasn't just some abandoned bunker, some forgotten relic of the Cold War. This was a tomb, a time capsule, a steel and concrete sarcophagus built to house the ultimate weapon. And for the next 24 hours, it was my home. The first time I saw the silo, it was through the cracked lens of a disposable camera. I was 10, maybe 11, and my grandfather, a man of few words and even fewer smiles, had taken me on a fishing trip. We drove for hours, the landscape flattening out into endless fields of wheat and corn, the sky a vast, unbroken expanse of blue. He never mentioned fishing. Instead, he pulled off the highway onto a dirt road, the car bouncing and rattling until we reached a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Beyond it, hidden in a shallow depression, was the silo. It looked like nothing, just a concrete slab with a heavy steel door, overgrown with weeds and forgotten by time. But my grandfather, his eyes suddenly alive with a spark I'd never seen before, knew exactly what it was. He'd served in the Air Force, during the height of the Cold War. He never talked about it, not really. Just mumbled stories, snippets of half-remembered details, like code words whispered in the dark. But I knew, somehow, that the silo was a part of that story, a piece of his past that he carried with him like a phantom limb. He didn't take me inside that day. Just stood there, staring at it, his face etched with a mixture of regret and something that almost looked like pride. He told me it was important, that I should remember it. He said it was a reminder of what we almost lost, and what we had to protect. He never fished. He never explained. He just handed me the camera and told me to take a picture. That photograph, faded and blurry, became an obsession. I spent years researching, reading everything I could find about the Cold War, about nuclear weapons, about the men and women who lived and worked in these underground fortresses. I learned about the constant state of alert, the drills, the paranoia, the ever-present threat of annihilation. I learned about the human cost of deterrence, the psychological toll of living with the knowledge that you held the fate of the world in your hands. My grandfather died a few years later, taking his secrets with him. But the silo remained, a silent sentinel in the middle of nowhere, a constant reminder of the past and a challenge to the future. I felt an obligation, a need to understand what he had experienced, to connect with him in a way that I never could when he was alive. That's why I was here now, descending into the darkness, ready to face whatever secrets the silo held. It was more than just an adventure. It was a pilgrimage, a way to honor his memory and to finally understand the burden he had carried for so long. The generator hummed, a constant, low thrum that vibrated through the steel floor and up my legs. It was supposed to be a comforting sound, a promise of power, of survival. But tonight, it was just another reminder of where I was, of what I was, of who I had become. He found me there, in the control room, bathed in the sickly green glow of the monitors. My father. His face was etched with worry, deeper lines than I remembered seeing just weeks before. His eyes, usually so bright and full of purpose, were clouded with a fear I knew mirrored my own. "Sarah," he began, his voice rough, like gravel. "We need to talk." I didn't turn, couldn't. The weight of his words, the unspoken dread that hung in the air, was almost unbearable. I kept my gaze fixed on the simulated map of the world, the little blinking lights that represented cities, lives, potential targets. They're saying it's inevitable," he continued, his voice barely a whisper. "The order, it could come any minute." The order. The one we had trained for, prepared for, our entire lives. The one that would unleash hell on earth. The one that would make us executioners, not protectors. I finally turned, my eyes locking with his. "And?" I asked, the word a brittle shard of ice. He closed the distance between us, his hand reaching out to cup my cheek. His touch was warm, familiar, but it couldn't thaw the frozen fear that had taken root inside me. "And I won't let you do it, Sarah. I can't." The fight started small, a whispered disagreement that quickly escalated into a shouting match that echoed through the concrete corridors. He argued about morality, about the sanctity of life, about the future of humanity. I argued about duty, about the oath we had taken, about the consequences of disobedience. "We're soldiers, Dad!" I screamed, the words raw and desperate. "This is what we trained for. We can't just walk away. And what kind of world will be left if we do this, Sarah?" he roared back, his voice cracking with emotion. "What kind of life will you have, knowing what you've done?" He tried to physically restrain me, to pull me away from the launch console. I fought back, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate, twisted sense of loyalty. We grappled, two figures locked in a desperate dance of love and betrayal, the fate of the world hanging in the balance. In the end, he won. He was stronger, older, more determined. He pinned me against the wall, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he choked out. "But I can't let you become a monster." He disabled the launch sequence, severing the connection, defying the orders. He condemned us both. The consequences were swift and brutal. Military police stormed the silo within hours. We were arrested, interrogated, stripped of our uniforms, our dignity, our purpose. He was branded a traitor, a coward. I was seen as complicit, a disappointment. The world above ground went on, oblivious to the near catastrophe they had narrowly avoided. We were buried, not by nuclear fire, but by silence. The silence is what haunts me now. It fills the small apartment I live in, a cramped, sterile box on the outskirts of the city. It echoes in the empty spaces of my life, where laughter and connection used to be. It screams at me in the dead of night, a constant reminder of what I lost, of what I did. I see his face everywhere. In the faces of strangers on the street, in the flickering images on the television screen, in the mirror when I dare to look. His eyes, filled with love and pain, accusing and forgiving all at once. He died a few years after our release. A heart attack, they said. But I know it was more than that. It was the weight of the world, the burden of his choice, the knowledge that he had saved humanity, but destroyed his own daughter in the process. I visit his grave sometimes. A simple headstone, tucked away in a quiet corner of the cemetery. I don't know what to say to him. Apologies feel hollow, justifications feel pathetic. All I can do is stand there, in the silence, and remember. I tried to rebuild my life, to find some semblance of normalcy. I got a job, a meaningless, soul-crushing job in a data entry office. I tried dating, but the men I met could never understand the darkness that clung to me, the secrets I could never share. I am a ghost, walking through the world, haunted by the past, afraid of the future. The sun hurts my eyes. The noise of the city grates on my nerves. I long for the silence of the silo, the sterile comfort of the concrete walls, the illusion of control. Sometimes, late at night, I dream of the launch console. I see my fingers hovering over the buttons, the weight of the world resting on my shoulders. I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, my breath ragged. I am trapped, not in a concrete bunker, but in a prison of my own making. A prison built of guilt, regret, and the unbearable weight of knowing that I was once willing to destroy the world. And that my Father, in His infinite love, saved me from myself. But in doing so, He condemned me to live with the consequences. A life lived in the shadows, 24 hours without sunlight, forever. Block 5, the hydroponic garden, once a vibrant promise, now felt like a mocking echo. The wilting tomato plants mirrored the slow decay within me. My reflection in the condensation clinging to the glass showed a ghost of the man who had descended into this concrete tomb. The weight of isolation, the crushing silence punctuated only by the hum of the life support systems, had chipped away at my resolve, leaving behind a hollow shell. The emergency broadcast system crackled to life, the robotic voice a jarring intrusion. It repeated the same message, a loop of despair. Nuclear exchange, widespread devastation, survival unlikely. I switched it off, the silence that followed heavier than before. What was the point? I had survived the initial blast, but for what? To witness the slow, agonizing death of the world from within this sterile bubble? I wandered back to the silo's control room, the cold metal console a stark reminder of its original purpose. A purpose that had failed. We had built these fortresses, these instruments of annihilation, hoping they would guarantee peace through mutual destruction. Instead, they had ushered in the apocalypse. I sank into the worn command chair, the leather cracked and peeling, a metaphor for the broken promises of the past. Suddenly, a flicker on one of the dormant monitors caught my eye. A faint, almost imperceptible signal. I leaned closer, adjusting the frequency, my heart pounding a desperate rhythm against my ribs. It was weak, fragmented, but there, undeniable. Another signal. Another survivor. Hope, a fragile seedling, pushed through the hardened earth of my despair. Days blurred into weeks, consumed by the painstaking process of strengthening the signal, of establishing contact. The static was deafening, the connection tenuous, but I persevered, driven by a newfound purpose. Then, one morning, a voice. A woman's voice, crackling and distorted, but undeniably human. Hello? Can anyone hear me? This is Dr. Anya Sharma, from Boulder, Colorado. Tears streamed down my face, a torrent of grief and relief. I replied, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper. Anya, this is John. I'm in a silo, in Montana. The silence that followed was agonizing, stretching on for an eternity. Then, her voice, stronger now, filled the small control room. John. I hear you. I hear you. We're not alone. We talked for hours, sharing our stories, our fears, our hopes. She was a botanist, she explained, working on a project to develop radiation-resistant crops. She had survived in a reinforced underground laboratory. Others had survived with her. The connection eventually faded, but the knowledge that I was not alone remained, a beacon in the darkness. We spent days trying to re-establish contact, and finally, we succeeded. Anya and her team were working on a plan to emerge, to assess the damage, to rebuild. They needed my help. They needed the resources of the silo. I looked around the control room, at the monitors, the consoles, the life support systems. This place, once a symbol of destruction, could now be a sanctuary, a starting point for a new beginning. The silo was no longer a tomb, but a seed vault, a repository of knowledge and resources for a future I had thought was lost. I began the process of preparing for their arrival, of reactivating systems, of inventorying supplies. The work was hard, exhausting, but I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer just surviving, I was living. Weeks later, I stood at the silo entrance, the heavy blast doors slowly grinding open. The sunlight, harsh and unfamiliar, stung my eyes. But as my vision adjusted, I saw them. Anya and a small group of survivors, their faces etched with hardship, but their eyes filled with hope. Anya stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "John," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "welcome back to the world." I took her hand, and together we stepped out into the light. The world was scarred, broken, but it was still there. And we were still there. And together we would rebuild. The silo, once a symbol of the end, would become a symbol of a new beginning. A testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring power of hope, even in the face of unimaginable devastation. The sun felt warm on my face. It was a new day.